So we have that humming noise, which is pretty weird, but as you can see, a good way up and down like this does test your control arm ball joints and stuff and bushings, and then left to right helps you check tie rods. Obviously it moves, but you'll feel it get kind of clunky. And then they say for the wheel bearings, you kind of go at an angle to both. You can shake it. I mean, obviously it moves a little bit, but there's no clunking on this side. And then we come over to the passenger side. Side to side, it moves, but not really any clunking. But when we do go to this angle, you can see that.
Let me see if I can hear it. Yeah.
You can hear it clunking and there is some noise. And when we go this way, up and down, you still can hear that clunking. This isn't moving. You can check that while you hear the clunking and movement. And then also the bottom one there, when I do that, you can see that those are solid, not really moving. It's, yeah, so let's replace them. So 4.5 years ago, installed these pretty massive wheel spacers. I think they're like 2 inches or something. So I'm pretty sure in the comments, some people, you know, obviously are gonna say it's not a good idea. And yeah, you know, the reality is your wheels are further out and it is putting more stress on your wheel bearings. But 4.5 years, the FJ has 200,000 miles now. It's really hard to say if it did contribute to it. Obviously might have caused it to wear out sooner rather than later. But yeah, we did it for the looks. It looked cool. And I guess at the time, my dad was mainly using this for driving on the beach. So I guess it does help with a little bit of stability, but we don't really off-road with this anymore. So while I replace the wheel bearings, I'm also gonna take the wheel spacers off. Because another thing is my dad might start towing with this vehicle as well. And with the added weight on the rear, I don't want the rear wheel spacers to also start having issues because we're just replacing the front wheel spacers, or wheel bearings. So yeah, we're gonna take them off, but I just thought it'd be something important to point out because I know on Tacomas especially, it's kind of known as something that putting wheel spacers on will cause the wheel bearings to go bad. And these are pretty dang similar to the Tacomas, so yeah, take it as you want, I don't know. All right, so fast forward a little bit and I've got the old bad wheel bearing out. Took the wheel spacer off, took the 2 bolts holding the caliper off and took this off as a whole with the brake pads still in here, and just hung this from the upper control arm. Then just slid the rotor off, and then for the axle, removed the cotter pin, the piece that holds the cotter pin, and then the nut for the front axle, which I was able to just gun off with this 35mm socket. And that's all under this cover, so you just gotta pry this cover off first. Then 17mm nuts on the wheel bearing hub piece, which the new one comes with all that. So after you loosen these, for us with our FJ being lifted, you know, you want to make sure that the axle is actually loose, because the splines in here do go through this. So I made sure this was loose, but the problem is when it's lifted, the suspension, it sags at a pretty extreme angle, and this kind of will hit the lower control arm. So I did jack this up so that I was able to push this back even further, as you guys can see, whereas before it kind of starts hitting down here. And then just use this dead blow and just started hammering on this, and you will see the gap where it touches here start to increase. And just kept hammering it from each side until it came off. The only thing to know is make sure you have this on here before you put your new one on, or you'll have to take the new one off again to put the brake dust shield back on place. And then there was a bunch of kind of like crud inside here. I did also kind of sand this surface, and then we used brake clean and just cleaned out the inner part where this is going to be going into. And then I'm going to just put a little bit of grease in the inside. And we're gonna go back together, put this on. There's a lot of videos of this out there, so I didn't want to do step by step and make a super long video, but we're gonna get it back together. So we actually just finished replacing the wheel bearing and hub on this side as well. This one wasn't bad, but I just think it's not a bad idea to replace them as a pair. So did both the fronts. The only thing I didn't mention on that side is when removing the caliper, there's just a 12mm bolt right here with this bracket that I removed so I could hang it up here. And then also, in order to hang it up there, you have to remove the connector right here that goes to your like wheel speed sensor. And then these two little pieces right there, you can just use a pocket screwdriver and pop those open. And then I bring that wire that way, so everything's out of the way. And that sensor actually, once you take the wheel bearing off, you can actually see the sensor where it goes in into the like spindle. So yeah, now we're gonna just throw the wheels on and turn it around and just take the wheel spacers off the rear. Just turn the FJ around in the garage, finish those front wheel bearings, and just figured I'd show you all kind of what it looks like now without the wheel spacers. It's more just like kind of flush with the fender and the rail on the side. We actually removed the like plastic fenders, so it's flush with the body fender, but the plastic piece would stick out a little further. And as you can see, the rear does stick out more than the front. Now here's after removing the rear wheel spacers.